All right, welcome back to another episode of Real Talk, Michigan Edition. Jeff, Dan, how are you, sir?
We're doing it, man. We're back to back weeks now.
Yeah,
We're in full swing, baby.
not quite in full swing. We haven't really talked Michigan football depth chart, schedule, stuff like that. But yeah, we're talking a little bit of football, which is fun. This week we're going to talk a little Big Ten West. This was actually asked for me to do by one of our listeners. I'll shout him out here, Dave Hazelton, if you're listening. He kind of asked, he's like, "Hey, I'd love for you guys to talk a little bit of the Big Ten West and kind of give us a preview there." I told him straight up, I'm like, Dan's good at that kind of thing. I am not. It's not really my forte. I've always been super impressed on your knowledge about just random ass players that had key roles at different other schools, not named Michigan or even Ohio State. Because I'm decent when it comes to maybe Ohio State or a marquee player at maybe a Penn State or a Michigan State. But like outside of that, your Purdue's, your Indiana's, your Northwesterns, I could kick a rat's ass. You've always been pretty good at that. I think this will be a fun pod. We're just going to kind of go over where we see these teams as far as just like plus minus, their marquee matchups, their ads, whatever it is. But first, I want to talk a little bit of Michigan. Jim Harbaugh, as of today, as of the other day, his suspension for 2023 has been lifted. Sounds like it's not completely dead in the water, but at least for this season, opinions there.
I feel like, if the NCAA had concrete, stuff to nail him with, I feel like they would have done it. And I thought it was interesting that Jim Harbaugh is not legally allowed to talk about this to the press or anything like that. He's been asked a million times already if he can elaborate. And he keeps saying no, no, no. And the NCAA went out and basically posted it on the internet of what was really going on. And they didn't get too super detailed, but they basically were like, it's not just about a cheeseburger. So it's like, so they broke their own rules because they were talking about it. Jim's not allowed to talk about it. So I don't know if just somebody in that realm, in that sphere, just has a grudge out for Jim or what the hell's going on here. I did, kind of like half serious, half sarcastically I posted, on my personal social media, like 15-0 on deck. Let's go, but with it getting pushed to 2024, I just find it really interesting. Now, one of the first things I thought about that's kind of like in the back of my head is whatever they do this year, is it going to, in the future, eventually be forfeited and they give up the wins and all that stuff because of some part of the, the ending of all this? I just very curious on what's going to happen in the future. And again, another thing too is this Jim Harbaugh's last year where he's just going to play this out and dipset for real this time?
We often hear like when there's a punishment going on with a player at said school, right? You often hear the school is trying to sort this out behind closed doors, and they're going to basically present the NCAA with a punishment that they feel fit. And then the NCAA usually approves or adds on weeks or whatever it may be, right? You almost never, and this is crazy to me, you almost never hear somebody negotiating their own penalty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I thought it was very strange. Like, Jim Harbaugh working close with the NCAA on a suspension. What? Like, that's legitimately, like, my son, he disobeys me, and he's like, Dad, I know what I did was wrong. I think I should negotiate my punishment with you. I'm thinking maybe grounded to my room for 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, the whole concept's really strange to me. I've never literally heard that before. And it just makes me wonder. And I did also hear that the NCAA was like, yeah, it's not just a cheeseburger, so chill. Like, I heard that as well. But it makes me wonder, like, what is there? Because otherwise you could have just dropped the hammer. You could have been like, no, these are the 4 games. Tough shit that it's during potentially the best season of your coaching career, whatever it may be, right? I do, to elaborate on your last point, I do think that you've preached it, I've preached it, we've talked about this. If you're a Michigan fan at all, you have to feel this way. This is our best chance. this season right here. And it wouldn't shock me if Harbaugh gives it his absolute all. He's already projecting, I think he said 20 players to the draft next year. He gives it his all, regardless of the outcome. He puts these dudes in the draft, and he's like, Michigan, I left you way better than I found you. Deuces to the NFL. Like, oh, and also NCAA. I won't say it online, but if you're watching, you know what I did. So it's like, it's one of those things where I think Jim is super petty. I don't know about you. I think he's petty. This would be the ultimate. Like, oh, you're not gonna suspend me for this season? Fine, I'm gonna go out. Maybe it's 15-0. Maybe it's just a Big Ten championship beating Ohio State. Maybe the team flops. Who knows? But you go out, you give it your best, and maybe you just ride off to the sunset. Like Michigan, unfortunately, between the NIL bullshit, the issues with the AD, and now this NCAA looming suspension, you're trying to screw all my assistants that I just got done telling the world are all going to be head coaches next year. Yeah, no, I'm not playing this game. I'm out. It wouldn't shock me.
Right. And I like the way you put it last week when we were talking about the college realignment. And I basically said, this season is really for me and Natty or bust. It's the one window that's got one last chance to jump through it and to bring home the national championship and all that stuff. And you said it was like kind of like a last dance feel. And like, doesn't this just kind of add to that a little bit? This is like the last hoorah here. You know what I mean? So we'll see. We'll see. I like for him to stay around. If obviously he leaves, probably not getting Jane Davis anymore. So the whole recruiting cycle will be quite the upheaval, but who knows? Let's just put it all on the line and let's do it.
I don't know about you. I'm very 2021 LA Rams here. Like all in, shove all the chips in. Doesn't matter what the cards are. We're willing to play with what we have here. And we're going all in. Like this is what it is. If this means that Michigan kind of has to take another step back, first off, just me personally, I don't think if this team makes a deep run in the college football playoffs, maybe they only win one game, they make it to the Natty, maybe they lose to Georgia, okay? How is this not the number one job opening in a very long time?
Yeah.
Because Ohio State, they didn't even have a job opening. They already gave it to Ryan Day. Otherwise, that would have been a very top job opening, right? USC, I'm sorry, like that's a great job, but like it wasn't a great job opening. Lincoln Riley turned it around. Texas hasn't been a great job opening. LSU, I'd argue, maybe had a little bit of, they came off a national championship, but then everybody left. And then they went back down in the dumps. Alabama, even when Saban took it over, I can't remember somebody leaving after basically either winning the Natty or coming up short in the Natty. That has not happened. Nobody has literally gone up or runner-up and then bounced. That hasn't happened.
Yeah.
This would be the best opening in college football in a decade, if not longer.
Yeah, 100%.
So I don't necessarily think that just because Michigan comes up short this year, Harbaugh leaves, that they're going back in the dumps. Conversation for another day, I guess. But enough on Harbaugh. He's back. We're going 15-0. You heard it here first here. Let's talk a little bit of Big Ten West.
Hold on real quick. I know we put that behind us. I'm telling you right now, if what remains to be seen, but if somehow Michigan goes 15-0 and does win a national championship, I will be insufferable for a long, long time. Like I wouldn't be able to contain myself. I would not be able to contain myself. Oh my God. Anyways, yeah.
Sidebar here. Going into this football season, my personal goals ranked. Okay.
Yeah.
Michigan winning the Natty. Okay. Me winning the Monday Morning Tears Fantasy Football Championship. For those of you that don't know, Dan's personal fantasy football league's name is Monday Morning Tears. It's a very tight-knit group of 10 guys. Our draft's next weekend. We're very excited about it. But I have been in this league now. I've honestly lost count. I've never won it. I've been the runner-up one time. I have the lowest career win percentage of anybody in the league, but I don't feel like I'm bad, which is kind of frustrating. But anyways, back to my point. So those two, and then basically, I don't think the Patriots are a Super Bowl team, but Patriots make the playoffs. And I'm starting my first ever dynasty league this year too, so I'm very excited about that. But those three right there, like in order, so that just goes to show you like where I'm at Michigan, where I'm at on this fantasy football championship. I'm locked in this season. So.
Oh, dude, I would be to make a visual. I would probably be like Randy Marsh from South Park when he had elephantitis in his nuts and he had it in a wheelbarrow and he's pushing it down the sidewalk. Like, I can only imagine it, dude. But anyways, I just want to say that. But yeah, if it somehow happens, look the hell out. Look the hell out.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, if you listen to this pod, maybe you listen to the NFL pod, maybe you listen to the Michigan pod, maybe, obviously you're listening now if you're hearing this, but like, if you don't realize me and Dan have like this next level love affair for Michigan football, and it's just kind of like taking the next, I mean, it's lost on you, then I don't know why you're listening, but it would bring me to tears that even beating Ohio State in 21 wouldn't have been able to match. So, I shed lots of tears in 21 when we beat Ohio State. I got really choked up when Michigan made it to the national championship in 2018 because I thought that team had a really good chance to avenge the 2013 team in hoops from talking about here. I thought that team was going to make it far. It was my birthday week. It was my birthday. The national championship game was played on. My wife had just told me she was pregnant with our third child. I was very hyped. Unfortunately, that game came short. But this is the next one. This is like, it's right there. It's in Target. Big Ten West. You ready?
Let's do it.
So the way Brad and I like to do our breakdowns is we like to go worst to first. So I'm going to kind of do that here. We're going to start with the worst team. They're less intriguing. We kind of build up to the good ones. But Northwestern. Holy hell. They went 1-11 on the season and 1-8 in the Big Ten. So pretty pitiful. I don't have their one win in front of me, but if I remember correctly, it was Nebraska in Ireland.
Yeah, they didn't even win in America last year.
Yeah, they beat Nebraska week 0 in Ireland, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of a weird. They literally finished the season 0-10. So, or 0-11, my bad. But obviously, the offseason for them has been arguably worse than their football season was. Pat Fitzgerald allegations. Don't want to get super deep into that. If you don't know what's going on with Pat Fitzgerald, the former head coach of like 10 plus years, feel free to go Google it. It'll come right up. Do you know who their new head coach is? Do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, David Braun. He was hired to be their defensive coordinator. He came from North Dakota State. Apparently, that's the defensive coordinator that won numerous national championships there. I think probably with Carson Wentz, but he came over here and now he's essentially the interim head coach for the season. He's never been a head coach before, so we'll see.
So he is interim head coach. He's not the head coach. Okay. And then the one thing I wanted to add, obviously, this is a Michigan pod. AJ Henning, he's the statistic of 2021. Hassan Haskins scored 5 touchdowns. Who scored the other against Ohio State? It was AJ Henning. Great ball in hand player for Michigan over the last couple of years. Sad to see him go. I'm hoping to see him thrive in this team. Unfortunately, is what it is. At least he'll get a world-class education like he was getting at Michigan. What do you got on Northwestern that I didn't give?
Well, yeah, you said 1-11 last year. They their offense averaged under 14 points per game, pretty bad. Their defense is returning 5 starters this season. Obviously, all the turmoil is going on. They got a new interim head coach. They lose Peter Skoronski, 11th overall to the Titans, so they lose offensive line depth. They lost running back to the Colts. They lost one of their best defensive players to the Colts as well. They do bring in AJ Henning, like you mentioned. They bring in Cincinnati quarterback transfer Ben Bryant, who 2,700 yards, 21 TD, 7 picks last year, entering his 6th year. They get a wide receiver from Arizona State and Cam Johnson, who's entering year 5. So they're going to have some reliable weapons, if you want to call it that, on offense, but obviously getting depleted. Oh, and real quick too, Nigel Glover, one of the players that entered the transfer portal. He was a 4-star linebacker. He's now a Buckeye. Pretty much kind of like a light rundown right there, but obviously they're going to struggle. And I had this team projected going, winning maybe 2 games, maybe 3 games, and after the Fitzgerald thing, I think 2 they're going to be lucky for. So, you know, they got a lot to do. They got a lot to do here.
Yeah, I wrote down their marquee matchups. I did see a couple of light opponents on there. I didn't write them down, but their marquee matchups I have on here are at Duke, home against Penn State, and they actually have a neutral site at Wrigley Field, which is fun, against Iowa.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, those are 0-3 in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I think they also played. Is it Howard? Do you have their schedule?
Yep. I'll give them a win versus Howard. They have that game between some Big Ten opponents. They play Howard at home before they go on the road at Nebraska, and then their other non-conference game is UTEP at home, because they open on the road at Rutgers, which I think that will be a loss. So really, my 2 wins I'm going to give them is UTEP, and I don't even know that much about UTEP. I could be wrong about that, but I think they could at least beat Howard.
Yeah. Howard felt like an easy win for me when I was looking over their schedule. The rest is honestly, I mean, they're not even a coin flip in. Like you said, UTEP feels like a team that they could probably handle. That game will be on Big Ten Network, so I mean, it's not much of a marquee game. So, overall, I'm not high on this team. I think this is a last place team. It sounds like you probably agree. Anything else on Northwestern?
No.
Next team here, Nebraska. They finished 4-8, 3-6 in the Big Ten. They move on from their head coach and they bring in Matt Rhule, former Baylor head coach who had a lot of success there. I think he was also at, Red School out east. Help me out.
Carolina?
Well, he was the coach of the Carolina Panthers, but I'm talking about in college. Temple. He was at Temple.
Right.
Yeah, he was at Temple. So I was just trying to name college. He was Temple head coach, and then he obviously coached Baylor. Yes, he did go to the Carolina Panthers where he was most recently. It didn't work out, but I try not to hold that against him. Some guys are just college coaches. Some guys are just NFL coaches. And Matt Rhule in college. Urban Meyer. Yes, perfect example. Perfect example. Matt Rhule's had a lot of college experience, a lot of success as well. That's a big time hire for them. I love that for them. Take away what you got.
So really, new coaching staff, new everything. Casey, who transferred in from Texas, quarterback, he's gone. He's going to Florida Atlantic. Ernest Hausman, probably one of their best linebackers. He's now at Michigan. They are going to have probably, a pretty experienced defensive line, or like front 7 overall, so not too bad there. They do bring in a quarterback from Georgia Tech, Jeff Sims, kind of more of a option style. He had 1,100 yards on the ground during his time there. They bringing a transfer center from Arizona State. They got a new defensive coordinator. It looks like they're going to be running kind of a base 3-3-5 defense, so that'll be interesting. And then they bring in Marcus Satterfield, their offensive coordinator. He was previously at South Carolina, and he was with Matt Rhule at Baylor. So a lot of familiarity amongst the coaching staff. So that's something that I'll be looking out for, and see how this Jeff Sims quarterback does. He's got a lot of game experience, but mostly known for being a running guy. So we'll see how they do with that. Obviously, Casey Thompson's gone, so they'll need a signal caller.
I've talked about this podcast a few different times on here. If you're not a fan and you like, a little bit of sports, a little bit of bullshit, and a little bit of interview, a little bit of whatever, Bustin' with the Boys, they do a great job. I think it's a super fun podcast. So one half of the co-host, Taylor Lewan, former Michigan alumni, and then the other half is Will Compton, former Nebraska alumni, former linebacker for them. And they had Matt Rhule on right after he accepted the job. at Nebraska. And listening to his interview, I'm excited for Nebraska. If I was a Nebraska fan, I'm not saying it's the level of like Jim Harbaugh coming to Michigan, but I think this is a massive hire for them. I think they did a great job. They hit a home run here. Do I think it's a tomorrow move? Probably not. I don't think this is like I don't think they're coming in and winning 9 or 10 games this year. This is going to be a building process, but I do think that this is the right hire. I think this is the right move. And Nebraska has to feel pretty good about themselves right now. They have some fun games. Their marquee matchups here at Colorado week 2, so they're going to see Deion Sanders right away. 2 brand new head coaches at programs. They got Michigan this year, which is kind of a tough draw, the Boston Bowl again. And then they're home against Iowa. But they do have Michigan at home, which is kind of that's big time for them. What do you think on Nebraska as far as their schedule and how they map out?
Well, first, I got in this Twitter conversation with a Michigan State fan the other day, and I thought it was going to start out to be like a sarcastic and trolling one, but it actually we went back and forth a few times. So first he dogged on Michigan, and I don't mean to take away from Nebraska here, but he was dogging on Michigan because he's like, "Oh, Michigan schedule's super soft, and they won't play anyone with a pulse till Michigan State." And so that's first of all not true. If Nebraska can go 4-0 right off the get, I think when that game happens at home against Michigan, I think that energy in that crowd could equal 2021's crowd. That 2021 game against Nebraska, Michigan, that was a nail biter. That was a field goal game and a late turnover from Daxton Hill, and Michigan seals it with Moody. But, coming out the gate on the road 2 weeks in a row against Minnesota, Colorado, I personally, when I broke these guys, I don't think they're going to lose those and then win 2 at home to be 2-2 against U of M. But if they go 4-0, there could be some hype going on and some optimism. But overall, I got them not getting 6 wins. I got them at 5-7. The schedule isn't like brutal, but Michigan's going to be tough. And then you have to go at Michigan State and at Wisconsin. And then you have Iowa the last game of the year. So I really have them on a 4-game bender to close out the season. So it's just, MSU, Maryland, Wisconsin, Iowa. I think that's brutal. I think that's what's going to hold them underneath the bowl game eligibility.
Yeah, to go back to what you were saying too is, as far as whether or not 4-0 is possible. So their first game of the year, Thursday night, okay, on the road at Minnesota, night game. I'm not huge on Minnesota. I think Minnesota's pretty good though. They're one of the better teams in the West. I think they're a hair better than Nebraska coming into this year. And then if they somehow pull out the win, the very next week they're going to Colorado. I don't remember if this is. I can actually look real quick. Hang on here. This will be Deion's home opener.
Mm-hmm.
The first game for Deion, because the Colorado opens at TCU. Okay, so they'll play their first game at home with Deion Sanders. That crowd is going to be hype as hell. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
And you come to town, big noon kickoffs there. Klatt, Gus Johnson, Jenny Taft, all the boys, right? That feels like a loss. But if somehow they win that one, they're going to beat NIU, okay, Northern Illinois. Then they're going to beat Louisiana Tech. You're right. They're going to host Michigan. I think that's a noon kickoff now. I think that was just announced.
Yeah.
Which means Gus Johnson, Jenny Taft, Joe Klatt, the whole crew will be there. Big noon kickoff. Holy hell. Yeah, that just like that home atmosphere becomes hype. So
yeah.
Again, I think Nebraska will be a tough out because they're going to be coached well.
Mm.
But this is a marathon, not a sprint. I don't think they're very good this year.
Right.
They flirt with 500. Anything else on Nebraska?
No, sir.
What about another team that has a head coach this year? Wisconsin. They finished their season 7-6, 4-5 in the Big Ten. Not great. This has been a team that consistently battles at the top of the Big Ten, and unfortunately, they were not there this year. They fired Paul Chryst halfway through the year. We've potted about this a couple different times, and what the decision was going into that, and who we thought the replacement was. But then in the offseason, they get Luke Fickell from Cincinnati, which feels like a home run. First off, do you agree or disagree?
I agree. And when I went through this team on my show, I had a lot of fun doing it because Nebraska's going through that overhaul, like we just talked about. This program is going through an overhaul, and we'll break it down in a second. But I'm super bullish on Luke Fickell and the Badgers.
Yeah, I just think that this is a team that needed a kick in the nuts, like a fresh a breath of fresh air, and I think they potentially got it. I'll let you take it away. They returned their star back. This is a team that's got to feel pretty good. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Brandon Allen, yep, back-to-back 1,000-yard rush seasons. Obviously, that's run of the mill for Wisconsin historically. But the fun thing about this is they're bringing in Phil Longo, who runs the air raid. He's offensive coordinator. Now, Graham Mertz, he transferred. He's going to Florida, so now they need a new quarterback, right? So they're bringing in Tanner Mordecai from Southern Methodist. He threw for 7,000 yards and 72 passing touchdowns in 2 seasons. Granted, Southern Methodist not playing the cream of the crop talent-wise week in, week out, but you can't sneeze at that. You gotta really be like, all right, this dude's got upside. He's got potential. So Phil Longo, real quick. So he comes from North Carolina. From 2019 to 22, he produced multiple 1,000-yard backs and wideouts. So names of like Michael Carter, Javonte Williams, they were both over the century marks and simultaneously in 1 year, if I'm not mistaken. Sam Howell, Drake May, they look good on paper as well. Both quarterbacks, May and Howell, were hovering around 3,500 yards passing and 30 touchdowns every year. He's also coached DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, Shea Patterson. When those three were on the team, he was offensive coordinator for the 17-18 teams at Ole Miss. They're bringing in a whole new wide receiver core from the portal. Mike Tressel is going to be their defensive coordinator. He was with Fickell at Cincinnati. If you know who Mike Tressel is, obviously related to Jim Tressel, and he was the defensive coordinator for the Mark D'Antonio teams that were really good in the 2010s when Michigan State went on those runs with Kirk Cousins and Connor Cook and all that stuff. So reason why I'm bullish on that is good coaching staff and a lot of statistics to back it all up. And so it's going to be really interesting to see Wisconsin not having, 5-6 hog mollies up front and running five a clip. So we'll see. And the schedule is somewhat favorable. They play a lot of the stronger games at home, and they only got to play Ohio State, which is at home as well. So I'll let you get through the schedule and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, just briefly, as far as where you're talking about their quarterback that they're bringing in and the potential, I just got to throw a little joke in there. John O'Korn threw for 3,000 yards his freshman year, 28 touchdowns, 10 picks, came to Michigan and was, yeah.
No, you're right. You could definitely say that. You could definitely. I'm still wondering who the hell he was throwing that ball to at the end of the 2017 game. Nowhere near anybody besides Ohio State. 2 minutes, game on the line. John O'Korn, out of all the Michigan quarterbacks that Jim Harbaugh coached at that point, has a chance at winning his first game against Ohio State at home in the Big House. Oh, never mind. He just threw a pick over the middle to nobody even remotely close to it. Okay, got it. Good. Okay.
On 1st and 10.
Dude.
On 1st and 10. We could talk about this for hours. It's so funny because obviously this podcast started in 2020 and Michigan had a bad year, but they only played 6 games. They went 2-4, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously in 2021, Michigan's good. And in 2022, Michigan's good. So people only hear us talk so positively about Michigan. So it's I know you said this on your podcast the other day, and I'll give you a little shout out here. You were talking I'm about to go over Michigan's schedule, and those of you that don't know me in real life and you're only hearing me podcast for the first time, you're gonna think I'm a homer. I'm not a homer. I am, but you're traditionally not. Yeah, that 2017 season, as bad as that team was, Harbaugh had that team in position to win that game against Ohio State at the end of the year. And John O'Korn, 1st and 10, throws up a 45-yard post route to Ohio State safety with nobody but the water boy anywhere close. It's just what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Anyways, off topic there. But So, Wisconsin, their marquee matchups I have written down at Washington State, home against Iowa in their division, and then unfortunately they drew the card of home against Ohio State, which they do have in that home, which is positive. They're going to play Buffalo, not a great team, but interesting out of conference. Georgia Southern, they'll probably be beat up on. That's pretty much their marquees. Obviously, they're going to play the West, but I think there's some things to like about this team. The one thing is Camp Randall at night. It gets rowdy. They're going to host Ohio State Halloween weekend at night. So that is kind of a fun matchup. Outside of that, there's nothing that really sticks out to me. The Washington State games at Washington State at night. I think that's probably a tough matchup for them. But then again, Washington State also has usually ran the air raid as well. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean, in Washington State, rest in peace, Mike Leach ain't there. Gardner Minshew and whatever quarterback they run isn't there either. But, again, like I said, I was bullish on these guys. I got these guys going 10-2, and I think the only games I got these guys losing is Iowa and Ohio State, and I know those are both at home. And part of me is probably showing a smidge of bias towards Cade McNamara and the Hawkeyes on that one, but I think Iowa's just a little bit more of the complete team. And I know offensive woes were a big storyline for Iowa, but I think that Cade McNamara, Eric Gall, I think that can be the remedy for that. Now, the Ohio State game, they haven't beat Ohio State at Camp Randall in their own stadium since 2010. So, and again, I mentioned this this week on my show when I was breaking down Michigan Ohio State. It really depends on if Ohio State has their quarterback situation figured out at this point. Remains to be seen. A lot of teams are starting new quarterbacks, but one team that's not is Michigan. So that's why I'm at homer this year calling them 12-0. But with Wisconsin here, I think 10-2 is pretty reasonable, and their over-under by MGM Sportsbook was 8.5. So if I'm a betting man, I'm smashing the over.
Moving on here. I'll briefly say this. You have them 10-2. I like them more in the 8-4 range. When it comes to like this kind of thing, I don't like to just throw out a record and not predict where. I have them also losing Iowa. I have them losing Ohio State. I think they'll probably lose at Illinois. Illinois is going to be really tough this year. I mean, Brett Bielema's got that squad trending up. I thought they were really good down the stretch last year. And then at Washington State, honestly, feels like a loss too. That's just a tough environment. You're getting your second game under your belt. Not really a great spot to have that game. I don't know. This feels like a 4-loss team to me. 10-2 feels a little much, but I can see where you get it. You have to really believe in that coaching staff, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Coming in next, Iowa. They finish 2022 not great. 8-5, 5-4 in the Big Ten. They had one of the most miserable offensive seasons I can remember. I think I heard this stat, and correct me if I'm wrong if you have this in front of you. They finished number 1 in total defense and dead last in the NCAA in total offense. Dead last, like 200 something.
It definitely had. I don't know about the offensive part or the defensive part, but offense they were dead last in yards per game, or points per game. Or sorry, dead last in yards per game and points per game, 17.7.
Yeah, and they were number 1 in total defense.
Yeah,
scoring defense, which means like that's the most made up shit you've ever heard in your life. How are you that horrendous on defense, but you're not good on offense? Like not even a little bit good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're literally the worst team in college football at offense. That's just wild to me.
Mm-hmm.
But so the big time things for me, and you can take it away after this. Obviously, this is a Michigan pod. Cade McNamara coming to town. We could go hours on Cade McNamara. I have nothing but respect, admiration, and not that I'm like rooting for Iowa, but I do have a quiet like I really hope Iowa does good, and I hope there's a storybook ending where we can potentially see a Cade McNamara, J.J. McCarthy, Michigan, Iowa Big Ten championship game. That feels very storybook, very like that's the script. You know what I mean? That feels fun. And then obviously Eric Gall as well, former tight end at Michigan, had a pretty good career. Injuries a little bit, but overall, I like those additions for Iowa. There are some back end bullshit. I don't know if you have this written down, but there's like a new clause in the coach's contract where he has to score. Do you have it in front of you?
I do.
Take it away. Just take it away.
No, you're fine. So I'll start. I'll pick it up right there. So Brian Ferentz, Kirk Ferentz's is the offensive coordinator, and he is taking a $50,000 pay cut from $900,000 to $850,000. Now, with his incentives, he could get a $112,500 bonus. He needs to average 25 points per game and 7 wins, which can include a bowl game. The contract states if he does not hit his marks, he will be terminated June 30th of 2024. So there you go. All B's got to do is win 7 games and score 3 touchdowns a game. Now their quarterback room last year, this team was just weird. This team last year was just really weird. So a combined quarterback room threw 7 touchdown passes last year. That is absurd.
That feels fake.
Yeah. They somehow won the Music City Bowl against Kentucky 21-0, and that was with their 3rd string quarterback because Spencer Petras was hurt. They lose a lot of guys in the NFL draft, but Phil Parker, their defensive coordinator, is always reloading here. So their defense again loses a lot, but I'm not really sweating it. I still think they're going to be good. I was always good there, and they bring back Cooper DeJean, their All-American or All Big Ten corner. Now the Eric Gall, Cade McNamara, that's where I feel like they can take the next leap there. But yeah, and then when we go into their schedule, it's pretty, I must say cake, but it's one of the easier ones. I mean, on the road at Penn State, which is going to be the whiteout, I feel like that's going to be the loss. And then they go on the road to Wisconsin, like we just talked about there. But I think that's very doable for them. Otherwise, I mean, they're finishing out the season with Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers. And I know Illinois is going to be not an easy out, but they're there. And then they're on the road at Nebraska. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm with you as far as their schedule. There's not a ton here. Utah State, the home open. This isn't a Jordan Love team anymore. I mean, this is I'm not sure what to make of Utah State. I know they're not really on the up and up. At Iowa State, that is a rivalry game, not to be taken for granted, but Iowa State was pretty bad last year after losing Breece Hall and
Iowa
Brock Purdy.
There.
Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. Very much you could tell they lost the guy that was playing in the NFC Championship game and the guy that basically had Rookie of the Year locked up until he got hurt. You could tell. That was very apparent. Western Michigan obviously feels nice. So really in their first 3 games, they might get tested at Iowa State, but they're better than them. Even with a bad offense, they're better than them. I think they're losing week 4 in a whiteout. That feels like a loss to me at Penn State.
Yep.
Outside of that, Cade McNamara beating Michigan State's ass like he's done. I mean, he threw for 400 yards last time he played him. Unfortunately, they took the L, but he's beating Purdue. Going into Camp Randall, I think he's beating that. I like Cade McNamara. I think he's perfect fit for this team. His interview he had in the offseason with,
Jordan Palmer.
Thank you, Jordan Palmer. He had an interview with him. Outside of them taking a couple of backdoor shots at J.J. McCarthy in Michigan, I thought that Cade was very confident in his ways and basically said, like, I feel really good about where we're at and what we have as a team. And Iowa just felt like the perfect fit. I truly thought even after Eric Gall took off to Iowa, I thought either Angelo Anthony would follow him or A.J. Henning. Neither did, is what it is. He was voted a captain his last year at Michigan for a reason. I think he's a top player. So their game at Wrigley Field we already talked about. I don't know. I think the schedule is super favorable. They didn't get Michigan. They didn't get Ohio State. They got at Penn State, which I still think is a loss, but they got to feel good. Even chalking them up a second loss somewhere, random, maybe they drop their game against Illinois. I feel really good about Illinois. I don't know about you, but yeah, I just think that this team overall, this is a Big Ten championship appearance or bust for them. Anything else on Iowa?
No, sir.
Moving on to Illinois, 8-5 last year, 5-4 overall. This team took Michigan to the absolute brink week before Ohio State. Obviously, it didn't help that Blake Corum was out, but just an absolute war of a game. They came up short, and unfortunately, because they lost that game, they ended up not being able to play in the Big Ten championship game. I don't know what they added, what they lost. I hope you'll go into that, but I do think this team's coached really well, and they have a pretty favorable schedule. I'll let you take it away.
So, yeah, you mentioned they notched some really good wins in October, and they kind of fell apart in November. They came unglued. Chase Brown opted out of the bowl game, so they lost to Mississippi State. Last year was their first winning season since 2011. They had the number one scoring defense, allowing just under 13 points per game. Their offensive lines were turning 3 starters. And despite a key player on defense, Devin Witherspoon going to the NFL, I think they're still going to be a respectable front seven and an overall defense. Obviously, Ryan Walters, their coordinator, he's now the head coach at Purdue. They lose quarterback Tommy DeVito, so they'll have to rely on Luke Altmaier. He is a backup quarterback from Ole Miss for the last 2 years, so he's going to be probably under center. So new surroundings, or new faces rather, but their schedule is pretty decent. They're over under on their schedule 6.5 wins. I like it, but then I don't at the same time, and we'll get to that in a second.
I mean, here's the thing. They're losing probably their best offensive player and best defensive player.
Yeah.
But I just seen enough fight in this team last year, and obviously we know what Brett Bielema does. I mean, this feels like a team that's trending up. They kick off the season, fun game, Toledo. Obviously, It's close to home for us, so that'll be fun. Big Ten Network too, so you'll be able to see Toledo and Illinois play on Saturday night. At Kansas, week 2, that feels like a W. They get Penn State at home. That's their hardest game of the year, in my opinion. Okay. Florida Atlantic, pushover game. Purdue, I think they're better than Purdue right now. Nebraska, well, time will tell. Maryland's interesting. I tend to like Maryland, and then they tend to bite me. Against Wisconsin. Wisconsin does come in the season ranked, by the way. I don't know if we even talked about that. At Minnesota, Indiana, at Iowa feels like another tough game late in the season. This will be damn near a Super Bowl for them because if they're as good as I think they are, winning that game potentially gets them into the Big Ten championship game. And then obviously they have almost a cakewalk their last game against Northwestern. So interesting schedule for them. I think there's some breaks here. Yeah. They have a bye right in the center. They have some easy wins early, and they get Penn State at home. I mean, this feels they got to feel pretty good about themselves if they think they're decent.
Yeah. I said a little more harsh on them. Their over under on MGM was 6.5, and I don't think they hit it.
Really?
Yes, I think they lose at
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They easily have 6 wins. Easily.
All right. So
hear me out. They're beating Toledo, right?
Yeah.
They're beating Kansas.
I don't think so.
They are. They're beating Florida. They're beating Florida Atlantic.
So Jalen Daniels is under center, and they've returned a lot of their production from 22. And Jalen Daniels was lighting the world on fire before he got hurt last year when they were on top.
I know they were scoring a bunch of points, but are they projected? They're not even ranked. Are they projected to be good?
I can't. I mean, from what I read is Jalen Daniels and most of their offense is back. That's why and they're playing on the road, in Manhattan, I think it is. But
It is.
I'm taking the Jayhawks.
Okay, fine. You've talked me into a loss there. They're beating Toledo. They're beating Florida Atlantic. I think they're beating Purdue. I think they're beating Nebraska. They're beating Indiana. They're beating Northwestern. That's 6 wins. They're not getting a single coin flip game out of you? Not one?
All right. So the wins I gave them is Toledo, Florida Atlantic, Purdue, which to me that's a potential night game. I think that could be a toss up.
You're right.
Indiana and Northwestern. On the road, Minnesota is being a road game, and then if they go to on the road at Maryland and Tagovailoa is healthy, I like the Terps there.
I guess this is the one team that we maybe see differently, but here's the thing: where do you have Matt? 6 wins or 5 wins?
5 and 7.
Okay, yeah, I'm probably flirting around 7 or 8 wins. So it's not like I have them winning 10.
Right? No. And if Minnesota, if they play that game at home, I think maybe that sways towards maybe being a dub. I'm being a little harsher because it's a road game, but that's where I'm at. You got a new quarterback that's got hardly any game experience. It's just where I'm at is all.
Truthfully, I mean, September 16th, if I'm not mistaken, week 3, when they're playing Penn State, Michigan plays at night against Bowling Green that week. I'm going to have this game on. I'm rooting hard for Illinois. We need Penn State to drop a game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, next team, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Minnesota Golden Gophers. They finished the season with the best record, weirdly enough. 9-4. It wasn't good enough for first place. They were 5-4 in the Big Ten. I don't have anything for ads or losses here. I'll let you kind of take this team away. I don't have a ton on them. I just know they were pretty decent.
Yeah. My question for PJ Fleck and this team this year is are they reloading or are they rebuilding? He's been there 4 or 5 years now. It's time for him to show that. I mean, he's not a bad coach, and I'm not saying that he's got to go out there and prove to the world. But I mean, what are they at as a program? Interestingly enough, last year they boasted the 4th ranked scoring defense, and despite being 9th in giving yards allowed, they were 118th in sacks. So they're going to be looking to rush the passer this year. They're one of their best playmakers, Chris Altman-Bell. He should be back on a medical red shirt for his 6th year. They have, I think, I don't want to say he's an All-American, but he was on some sort of watch list. Their tight end, Devin Spanford, is going to be a reliable target for their quarterback. Now, they lose 2 key players. Now, this is what's going to keep me from really predicting these guys go very far is Tanner Morgan, the quarterback, no longer there, and their school rushing leader, Mohamed Ibrahim, a Detroit Lion. So as of right now, I'm stammering here. Several offensive linemen are gone, including a Remington finalist. So up front in the line of scrimmage, you got a lot of question marks. So that just not bodes what doesn't look good. Lose a handful of secondary players. Now, I don't know if he still has a pipeline or what he's doing, but he brings in Sean Tyler from Western Michigan. He's a running back. In 4 years there, he had 2,800 yards and 23 touchdowns. We'll see how he does in the Big Ten. And then he also gets a Western Michigan wide receiver, Corey Crooms, who had 1,500 yards and 11 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. So we got some potential there to fill the void, but a lot to lose. And I'm a big proponent on, if you lose a quarterback and you got to replace, a multi-year starter at running back, that's going to be a lot to ask for a Minnesota team.
Yeah, I don't think they get any scheduling breaks either. I think this is pretty tough.
It's brutal. It's
very brutal. So great fan week 1. Thursday night, 8:00, Big Ten matchup, Nebraska, Minnesota. Love it. Okay. Week 2, easy against Eastern Michigan. Should wrap that one up. Week 3, they're playing one of the top prospects in the entire country, quarterback Drake May, in the 21 ranked North Carolina Tar Heels on the road.
Yeah.
Tough matchup. I mean, this was probably scheduled years ago. Drake May has gotten all eyes on him. People will be watching this game. It's on ESPN. They get the Raging Cajuns at home. They get Michigan at home. Brown Jug on the line, but again, Michigan. At Illinois or at Iowa, so that's probably, in my opinion, the toughest West team, and they have them on the road. At Ohio State, my lord, like legitimately, they play 3 of the Big Ten East teams. It's Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, 3 of the 4 toughest East teams year in and year out. Do I think Michigan State's great this year? No. Do I think they're a cakewalk? No. So I mean, it's tough schedule, and they end the year with who they're probably, if they are as good as they think they are, it's Wisconsin, who's going to be battling for the West. It's brutal overall. They literally, like I said, no scheduling breaks whatsoever.
Right. Their over-under was 6.5. Now,
6.5?
What's that?
6.5?
Yes. Now, I predicted them at going 6-6. Now, I could easily see them go 4-6, and I have 2 toss-up games, and my 2 toss-up games is really Michigan State and Illinois. If Minnesota can have a serviceable passing game, I think they can potentially upset Illinois here, and then Michigan State. Again, I got a lot of question marks for the Spartans as well, so that's why I'm kind of 50-50 in those 2. But other than that, I think 6-6 is doable. I think it should be a goal to at least get to a bowl game. But again, on the road at North Carolina, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, just glancing, 6-6 is probably fair. I think their one thing they have going for them is they have the bye week before they go at Iowa. But right off the rip, they're easy games. Eastern, at Northwestern, probably Louisiana, though they were just ranked literally like 2 years ago. So Purdue, there's 4. Coin flip, Michigan State, I agree. Coin flip with Nebraska. The rest of those are dog fights. Not saying they can't win any, just dog fights, man. Dog fights. Anything else on Minnesota?
Good there.
Last team, wrapping this puppy up. Purdue. Purdue last year went 8-6, 6-3 in the Big Ten, and fortunately for them, they were able to represent the Big Ten West in the Big Ten championship game. They get beat by Michigan. They go into a bowl game. They get absolutely slaughtered by LSU, 63-7. So not great. They do have a big time ad though, in my opinion. Texas transfer Hudson Card.
Yeah.
Who went 900 yards, 6 TDs, 1 pick for Texas. He went toe to toe with Bama on basically no. He had no idea he was going to play in the game, obviously. Quinn Ewers gets hurt. He goes 14 of 22 versus Bama, 150 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. This feels like a nice pickup, in my opinion. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, Hudson Cards is a solid player. Well, at least he has a potential to be. He's got Graham Harrell as an offensive coordinator, so he's going to be running the show on offense. Got a lot of big shoes to fill. Excuse me, I cannot talk right now. Big shoes to fill because Aiden O'Connell is no longer there. He's with the Raiders, and Charlie Jones, he's with the Bengals. So, that 1-2 combination no longer there. Now, their schedule is absolutely brutal, like the last team we just talked about.
Yeah.
But, Ryan Walters, the former Illinois head defensive coordinator, he's not going to be the head coach. So, got a defensive-minded coach trying to stiffen these guys up, and as we'll see, it's not going to be an easy first year for Ryan Walters.
So in my opinion, let you agree or disagree. Of the Big Ten West, they have the toughest out of conference.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Not the toughest individual game because I think that belongs to Minnesota going to North Carolina, but they have Fresno State at VTech and home against Syracuse. Syracuse was ranked literally just like 2 years ago. Virginia Tech's a really respectable program. It has one of the best home field environments in the country. This feels tough. I think they would be privileged to go 2-1. Then the like you said, the schedule gets tougher. Wisconsin early, Illinois early. Two teams they're going to have to absolutely battle with in order to get themselves into the West contention. Then they have to go at Iowa. They have Ohio State this year. They finally get a bye week. They get Nebraska late in the season when they think they probably at that point have some swagger underneath them. Then they got to go to Michigan. If they somehow are in contention, here's the one bright spot. They finished the year home against the Gophers, at Northwestern, home against Indiana. Super winnable games if they're somehow in contention.
Yeah.
I guess that's the one bright. This schedule feels very tough. They play a ton of night games, by the way, like a ton of them. They're going to play at night 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and they still have 1, 2, 3, 4 games that don't have times announced. That's wild to me.
Yeah.
Just tons of night games. So, I mean, I would imagine that's to their credit if they're at home. Obviously, it sucks if it's not. Their game against Iowa, which will be a massive game for them, at Kinnick at night. No, thank you.
Yeah, their over/under is 5.5 wins on the year.
5.5.
5.5. I have them slated for 5 wins. I was only going to be 4, but the one I switched back around in their favor was against Northwestern. So previous to all the Pat Fitzgerald nonsense, it was a loss. I gave them a W there. Now I have them losing 6 in a row, and that 6 in a row is Wisconsin to Michigan, Illinois. From Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, Ohio State, Nebraska, Michigan. I got all that L. My wins: Fresno State, Syracuse, and that's going to be iffy. Minnesota, Northwestern Indiana, of course. Now, yeah, Virginia Tech, I don't think they're winning. Now, I've seen somewhere like a college football Twitter account or X account was doing previews or whatever, and they have a substantial amount of followers, and they were giving Virginia Tech a preview, and they only had them going at 1-11. So I'm like, apparently Virginia Tech's supposed to be completely ass this year, but I don't see it that way. And I think Enter Sandman, their home environment, all that stuff, I think Virginia Tech is going to be too strong of a place to play for Purdue to pull off an upset. But yeah, they had them at 1-11. I'm like, okay, or 2-10, something like that.
So Virginia Tech last year was 3-8, 1-6 in the ACC. They kick off at Old Dominion. They're beating them. Boston College, Wolford. I would imagine they're beating Wolford. It doesn't get easy after that, but they're beating at Liberty. They're beating Liberty. I don't know. They're more than 2 wins. But is it enough for Purdue to get a win? Sure.
Right.
Like I said, I have Purdue going 2-1 the first 3, so that's 2 wins. I'll give them at Northwestern, Indiana. I'll give them those 4. I'll give them 1 coin flip throughout, so I'll give them 5 total wins. Yeah. What are they? 5.5?
5.5. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I like the under there. Man, I'll tell you what, the top end of the Big Ten is very tough.
Yeah.
Very tough, including the West.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I kind of have here. 1 second. There is. It was getting dark. Anything else on Purdue?
No, buddy, I'm good there.
Anything else on the Big Ten West? First of all, I don't think you necessarily said, maybe you kind of implied, who do you like to represent the Big Ten West?
I got Iowa facing off against we don't know yet from the East. So I got Iowa going 11-1. Yep, 11-1, and Wisconsin at 10-2.
Yeah, I think this was fun. I think we'll do the East next week. Not named Michigan, Ohio State, and we'll save those for a later time. But hopefully you guys dug this. Kind of did a little rapid fire. We went an hour talking a little of the Big Ten West, obviously a little hardball too. But yeah, that's all I got. Yeah, we'll get you next time. Big Ten East. Hope you guys are digging what we're doing. Follow us. Follow Dan's new podcast. Where is it at? One more time for the crowd.
Southeast Michigan Podcast. You can follow it on Twitter or X at SE_MI_pod, all uppercase letters. And you can get that wherever you get your podcast.
He's talking pretty much exclusively Michigan right now. I know he wants to talk a little hoops, a little hockey, little other Michigan athletics, sports documentaries to come as soon as he probably gets one out. But if you're digging this Michigan stuff, he's got more over there. I would suggest a follow. He's got some hype videos as well. I would suggest watching those. As always, we're out. Like, subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe again. Love us, hate us, whatever you want to do. Always go blue. We're out.
Ryan Day dyes his beard.
Real talk.